The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad. Welcome to Liberated Sisters. We're recording live right here at Morris Media Studios. We thank you for joining us today. It's exciting for me. I am reconnecting right here in the studio with a childhood friend, a classmate, a homeboy, no disrespect, Dr. Amin, to talk about nutrition, talk about health, plant-based diets, and urban gardening, among many, many other things. Our guest is Dr. Nazarak Amin. He's of the Wisdom Path Healing Center. We're going to speak with him, and we'd like to take your calls with him as well. I'll give out that number. But right now, I would like to get into the Justice Report.
In fact, what is happening now in America is signaling the clouds of war to gather. And while I'm on this broadcast, I would like to send a message to our president, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that we're in a period called the lull before the storm. The storm is World War III, or what is called in the Bible the War of Armageddon. In that war, which is prophesied, and we can't make the prophets liars. Everything that they prophesied in both the Bible and Quran are going to come to pass. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, knowing that there was a political dynamic at the time that he wrote this article, The Lull Before the Storm, he said, whoever should be president, it would be to his advantage to delay the war as long as he could, because it could be a great benefit to whoever would be in power. Unfortunately, President Trump has gathered around him some of the neoconservatives who are considered warmongers. And if President Trump attacks Syria under a false flag operation that President Assad killed his own people through the use of chemical warfare. If Mr. Trump goes the way he is presently going, it would be like taking a gun and putting it to his head and to the head of America and to the head of the Western world. The Western world will not survive this war. So once the war is started, the end of this present world has arrived. That is my warning to Mr. Trump. Delay it as long as you can, for as long as you can is to your benefit and to the benefit of America and all your so-called allies.
warning to America and all the so-called allies. That's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that you just witnessed there, speaking about this looming war on Syria. And he gave a message, as he has done before, to President Donald Trump and to the world. I want to take us now, as we get ready to hear from Dr. Nazarak Amin. We will have him shortly. But the Final Call cover story right now is written by Brother Askia Muhammad. He's our senior editor. You can see that at finalcall.com if you have the digital edition right now. And shortly, in a few hours perhaps, you can see that on the regular site at finalcall.com. But if you have the digital edition, which you should, please subscribe. You can read the full story right now. And it's a great cover. You see President Trump and President Putin of Russia, and the question is asked, will there be war? There it is. There's an image for you. Will there be war? Very great article. I'd just like to give you a little bit of that. Brother Askia starts out with the question, World War III in slow motion. And so what we know is that U.S. military forces were joined by the United Kingdom and France, and that was on April 7th, I believe. Yes, they launched hundreds of military strikes against Syria. That is not new. Many people know about that. Some of you may just be hearing for the first time. Protests took place around the country, internationally as well. And what we know is that they're saying this was to punish Syrian President Bashar Assad for his alleged use of chemical weapons. So a year after similar attacks were made, this is happening again. So President Donald Trump, Brother Askia Muhammad writes, quickly declared via Twitter, mission accomplished. Okay, we've heard that before with President George Bush and the Iraq War. But nonetheless, finalcall.com for this. World War III is happening in slow motion. George Galloway, a former member of the British Parliament, said on his Mother of All talk shows, it appears we have a political leadership that's in quite a hurry to get to Armageddon. This is finalcall.com. I'd like to reiterate that. Also for the Justice Report. Oh, and also, pardon me, the clip that you heard from Minister Farrakhan, you can view the entirety of it at his Facebook page and also on YouTube. Minister Farrakhan made that message when he did a radio interview from St. Kitts, which is where he was born. Some other, okay, thank you. We do have Dr. Amin. I just want to point out that some other stories in the Final Call that I'd like for you to take note of. A great national story by Barrington Simon, spying, targeting, and arresting the secret police war on black activists. That's something that I really can't wait to dig into. I just got my digital edition today. Sister Nisa Islam talks about a lynching memorial and forgotten victims. And I have a story or two in there myself. One is about black women. There's a campaign that is encouraging us to elect black women and what that will have across the country in terms of impact. But let's turn now to Dr. Nazarak Amin. And thank you so much for being with us. He's at the Wisdom Path Healing Center. Greetings.
Greetings.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you. Okay, listen, I'm about to get giddy and old school, everyone. I really want to be so respectful of myself, you, and Dr. Amin, but this is a childhood friend, a classmate. So this is triple special to me, seeing you. And I told him before, I just had to get it out when we talked yesterday, like, Carl! And I say that because many know, but many still don't yet know of your name and all of your work and what you do. So I just had to get that out, as I'm just envisioning so much from our hometown of Opelousas, Louisiana. And so you really are jumping us into a segment that I've wanted to do a long time. I've been talking about it and, it's produced in my head, but we're bringing it out, putting Opelousas on the map. We have so many classmates that are doing things that are helping to shape lives, right down to many of our brothers and sister athletes. Some are pro ball players, some are educators, some are ministers, some are attorneys, some are housewives. But what I'm saying is that there's a little small town called Opelousas, and it's got people out there doing big things. So thank you for being with us so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that was my long intro. So I just want to make it a fireside chat, right? And everybody's invited. So give me your path to what you do now. It's naturopathic medicine, Chinese medicine, holistic healer, all of that. Break it down.
Right.
When did you start?
It actually starts in Opelousas.
Yeah.
I was 11, actually. It's funny how things come full circle.
Uh-huh.
I think I was in either 5th grade or 6th grade, and I used to ride a skateboard all the time, and everywhere I went. And one day, one of my friends came and asked me to walk to the store with him, and I ended up walking out into the street, and I was run over by a car.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was an interesting experience. So really, I was hit by a Toyota pickup truck, and I went over the top of the truck. And in the end, there was no bones broken, but all of my skin came off. So what I remember from that was my mom running up to the scene. Someone ran and called my mom. She ran up, and I came through, and she passed out. And so. And the medics came, and they handled me really harshly. And I got to the emergency room at Opelousas General Hospital, and they brought me in, and I hear something in the background, like somebody really, really angry, and all I hear was, where is that little nigger that ran into my son's truck? And It was the head doctor of the hospital, Dr. Desatel.
Oh my God!
And so
those names.
At the time there, I was doing. I had this social studies project that went all the way to the state level. And so I won the children's division, and this team came up and they asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I think I want to be a paramedic. I said, I want to make sure, and they asked me, why, and I told them about the incident.
Right.
And I said, I want to make sure that doesn't have to happen to people.
Come on.
Because,
wow.
It just doesn't have to happen. Why should a child be subjected to that kind of fear?
Yeah.
And so that's, and then life happens. So you go through puberty, you go through high school. I ended up, going to Xavier in New Orleans, and then I did a medic program, an EMT program at USL. And then I ended up working for 4 years for the city of New Orleans while I completed most of my undergraduate degree at Xavier in New Orleans. So, life happens. That was the time when, crack cocaine came out. So it was really like the U.S. military used to come in and work in the 911 system. They used to come in and train with us. That was before the first Gulf War. So it was really, the murder rate was high. It was exciting. And at the same time, eventually all the carnage got to me. And, I was done. And so you see me with the purple. So I'm part of a community. And, that community transformed my life.
Yeah.
And so I lived there for 3 years. And then after those 3 years, I ended up going back. I got my undergraduate degree from USL, and I was accepted to a medical school in Seattle called Bastyr. And I went through that 4-year naturopathic medicine school. And so, basically naturopathic medicine has not been popular in the U.S. It's a growing field. Back when I went through school, there was only 4 schools. Now I think there are 6 or 7 schools. But basically, the first 2 years are the same as if you go through any regular medical school. We study anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, microbiology, pathology. So the foundation is exactly the same as if you go through any conventional medical school, but the core of it is really, learning herbs, learning supplements, learning, Ayurveda, Chinese medicine. And so it's really treating the whole person versus the sort of mechanistic approach that's taken in conventional medicine. So, I say that we treat people and not diseases.
Wow.
So it's that's kind of the foundation. I'm also an acupuncturist and a Chinese herbalist. So I do a number of things in my practice. I say that when you graduate from whether it's regular medical school or naturopathic medical school, you come out with sort of a general idea of what you want to do. And then you have to sort of, choose the tools that you use to help people. So, on a daily basis, I do whatever it takes to sort of help people. Probably half of the people that come to me, I guess in their world, I am their sort of primary doctor. And then, I get a full range of patients, depending on, we do a lot of work in a lot of different areas. So it's a general sort of family practice. And we deal from, childhood diseases all the way up to, I have a number of patients now that have been with me for 20 years. I've been in practice for 20 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So, that's worked out beautiful. And I'm in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is in the DC area. So I'm in the DC Beltway. So the beauty of that is that, the clientele here are from around the world. And so, in America, natural medicine has not been so popular. In other places in the world, people really embrace natural medicine and it is part of the culture. And so to have all the diplomats, to have this sort of multicultural area that I live in, it's been a beautiful experience. And, you realize, when you talk about a small town, to go from being in an area where, many of the people there, their frame of reference for their world is about a 20 or 30 mile radius. I mean, nowadays, maybe it's a 60-mile radius.
Come on, teach.
To one where, it's a worldwide radius.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is tremendously beautiful. And you make it look easy. I mean, I love hearing your journey, and which you're still on, right? But, when we initially talked and I was just really excited, like, wow, really, wow. A lot of what you're doing and what you're saying resonates with me. I'm a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad under Minister Louis Farrakhan's guidance. And they teach us how to eat to live. And so everything you were talking about in terms and through, it's dealing with food.
Right.
And so everything you share.
And that's a huge foundation of everything that we do, because food is our gut. The inside of our gut is where the biggest part of our immune system lays. The inside of our gut, from a medical perspective, is an outside environment, but it is where most of our immune system is.
Yes.
And it's where most of the environmental factors that influence us come in.
Come on.
And so, so that's why food is the biggest environmental factor.
Yeah.
And, from the days of eat to live?
How to eat to live.
Yeah, how to eat to live.
From God in person.
Yes. Things have shifted quite a bit in terms of, what we know, because of the industrialization of the food system.
Yeah.
So nowadays, the old gradient that we used to use, which was, give up the pork, give up the red meat, chicken and fish are okay, and then sort of this transition towards a more plant-based diet. But these days in the industrial food system, chicken is probably one of the worst things, and turkey is probably the worst, just because of the way that it's being raised. You know, we're raising animals, feeding them corn, and just stuff they weren't meant to eat for their whole lifetime. And so what that does is those animals are sick when they go to slaughter, and then you're eating this. And so, you know, how if the animal had a metabolic syndrome before it went to slaughter, and this is the mainstay of your diet, eventually that's going to catch up with the people who are eating. So when we look at the fact that people have not changed the quantity of what they eat, and yet you have this obesity epidemic that's happening in America, it's like, well, what's driving this obesity epidemic? And it's this sort of way that they're growing these animals, which is, you know, basically to make money. So it's about, you know, this quick production time. Chickens go from hatching out of an egg to slaughter in 42 days. And, you know, people say, well, it's the hormones, but they're not putting hormones. They're simply feeding them corn and soy. And they put in a bunch of antibiotics because they have all these chickens in a closed space together, but it's not hormones. The chicken's hormones are being thrown off by the diet. Manipulated. And so that's what's affecting people. So in women, you know, it's driving the whole, the fibroids and, all of the infertility and, you know, this sort of crisis that we're having where, you know, everybody has some kind of hormonal overgrowth in their reproductive system. And in men, it's the prostate cancer. And all of the different sort of hormonally driven cancers that are out there that, you know, some of them were unheard of just until maybe 20 years ago.
And the rise among us, we've never had that problem. Let me say this as you continue, the slaughter, the way they're slaughtered too, but 323-293-3375. If you have a question, want to ask about anything health-related, food-related, call and speak to Dr. Amin, make a comment. 323-293-3375. We are taking your calls. Continue, brother.
Yeah, so we, you know, we really, we can transfer that over to, you know, the cows. Cows used to be 2 years. Now they bring cows to slaughter in something like 6 months. You know, all of these animals, turkeys live in the same conditions as the chickens do for a much longer period of time. And so that's what makes turkey potentially a much worse form of meat. So and the other thing that people get into is the fish. So farm raised salmon versus wild salmon. When you are feeding fish soy and corn as their mainstay in their diet, you throw off the essential fatty acid profile that makes them healthy for people to eat. And so then you're driving all of these sort of the inflammation that people are suffering from in all of these metabolic syndromes that we're acquiring. And so, you know, it comes out in the form of a number of different diseases, but it's really this industrialized food system. And then you bring over, you know, we've talked about the animals, but let's go to the plants. And you look at the fact that, you know, 90% of the corn, 90% of the soy, the canola, all of this stuff is grown using genetically modified plants. And so what that allows them to do in most cases is that the farmers have moved from traditional sort of tilling techniques to these no-till methods where even if, you know, we take something like BT corn and we say, well, you know, you've added BT, which is, it's called Bacillus thuringiensis, which organic farmers use to help kill caterpillars. So it takes care of the corn earworm on the farm, but it's not supposed to be in every part of the plant. So, you know, who's to say that people eating this stuff is not toxic to them? So that's the thing that they breed into the plant to make it toxic to the bugs. But the fact that now after you put this stuff on here, you can spray a chemical like Monsanto's Roundup or some other kind of glyphosate or 2,4-D, all of these herbicides on fields in mass quantities. And we're not taking into account what these herbicides, the impact of all these herbicides on people's health. So it's not just the meat, it's also the fact that we're using a lot more chemicals in the vegetable farming as well.
You know, it could sound scary. I want to ask you this to break something down for me as we continue. You say glyphosate?
Glyphosate. That's
Glyphosate.
That's what we know as Roundup.
Okay.
So I mean, Roundup is made by Monsanto, but glyphosate is the actual chemical. So it's like a drug. You know, it changes names depending on the manufacturer.
Okay, got it. You know, and every time I discuss this on some level, even when I read it and I know it for myself, right? I find personally I get paralyzed often. It's like grow something. Will Allen, right? Of Will Allen Firm's Growing Power. He says the worst thing to do, and many people, right? I'm sure you may have said it. The worst thing to do is do nothing. Do something, grow something. And that's
where people do get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But part of what we do is we make it practical because you have to start somewhere. You can't just look at the bigger picture and, you know, throw your hands in. I think I've been through sort of Afrocentric phases and revolutionary phases, but I really think the most revolutionary thing that you can do in one's life is grow your own food. You know, take control as much as you can. Grow some part of the food that you're eating. Get involved in your local food system. You know, we need local food sustainability wherever we are. So whether we live in urban areas or, you know, we live out in the country, you know, the sad part about the area that we grew up in is that, you know, at some point at the end of the 80s, it got cheaper for farmers to go to just quit farming and buy their food from the grocery stores.
We had many.
And all the small scale farmers have been run out of business. So, you know, I was in Louisiana trying to do organic farming in like 1993. And, you know, I was practically run out of there. You know, people had no value for organic. And, you know, my family, they were like, son, you are way too educated to try to be farming. You need to get out of here. Like, this is not for you.
I understand.
And so it took them, you know, now, like in the past, you know, 5 or 6 years, you know, they're like, hey, you know, that stuff you were into back then, it's really popular here now.
Yeah. And we need it. As you continue, you know, it's the difficulties we experience, part of it during enslavement. It's also, as you said, it's not supported. Sometimes it's talked against. It's just the perception and the image that people have of farming, you know, that it's something for the uneducated or something menial. But this is where we get our livelihood from.
Well, and that is exactly it. You know, one of the dilemmas in you know, now there's an Afroecology movement, there's a sort of a black farmer movement, but the dilemma of slavery being based in farming and the stigmatism associated with being a farmer and the persecution of being a black farmer, because many black farmers, you know, it was all the way up until the Obama administration that black farmers were, you know, they would always get their loans late. They were being set up by the system to lose their farms. And so they've been scared out of farming. And so, and looking at farming as, you know, it's funny. I got back into, so I run Wisdom Path Healing Center, and that's the medical practice. And so after, basically the way it works when you come to see me is that my initial visit is a 2-hour visit. And I sit down and I, you know, we go into the symptoms of the patient, but it's a way that we get to know people and we really get to know what their symptoms mean to them. Because again, you have to treat the whole person and you can't just say, you have this disease, this herb is good for this, or this supplement is good for this, or this remedy is good for this. You really have to like treat the bigger picture. Because, our symptoms are kind of like the warning lights on the car. And real health is about helping people connect their mind to their heart. We come here to live our purpose. And so, the maximum potential that we have as human beings can only come out when we're living our purpose to the fullest. And a lot of times physical illness is an impetus to get us to wake up from this sleep that we're living in. And so, and to change something and do something different and get closer to your purpose. Mm-hmm. So it's not, the traditional way is, I caught something, I got something, I just need to get rid of it. And that's between my body and the doctor. But, we teach people how to listen to their body, how to take control of their own health. And so in that process, the first visit is sort of that get to know you, understand what the person's dealing with. And then the second visit is a nutrition visit where we put people on a detox diet. And that visit is basically about tricking people into a healthier lifestyle, because we put them on the detox diet. And I think after about 3-4 weeks on the detox diet, so we asked everyone to stay on it for like a month. Mm-hmm. And so after you eat, whole foods, real food for a month, and you try to go back and eat this high, what do you call it?
Processed,
high calorie, low nutritional value food. This stuff that's on the market. Mm-hmm. When you try to go back and eat it, your body rejects it. Wow. So what we did was we started doing cooking classes, and the cooking classes were small cooking classes, 8 to 10 people, enough to fit in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And we had where I was living at the time, we had a yard, and the backyard, the side yards, everything. It was like a small urban farm. Wow. So we brought people out to the yard. They saw, broccoli and carrots, whatever we based the menu on what was growing outside.
Yum.
And so they went outside, they picked the food. Many of the people had never seen the food growing in a garden before. And then they came in, and then they made the meal in a way where everybody participated in the making of each dish so that they could go home and recreate it. Because one of the biggest obstacles that people have is like when you say, hey, give up all this processed food and start eating quinoa and whole grains and amaranth, and they're like, I've never heard of any of that stuff before, or Brussels sprouts. So we show people how to utilize the things that we're asking them to utilize, mm-hmm. and how to season it in a way that makes it palatable, because we have to like eating. So from that whole process, people started asking us how to show them how to grow food. And out of that is born the other business that we do, which is Purple Mountain Organics. So Purple Mountain Organics grew from we went out, and all the urban farming projects around DC, we've had some sort of hand in it in some way or another. So that whole growing up in the country, growing up in, on the outskirts of town, and, all those farm skills that I really, growing up, I remember our parents wanting us to go out to the farm, and we were like, no, we want to stay home and play, and
not me. I
go out and play with the friends, and they would drag us to the farm. But what we got from that was basic living skills.
Yeah.
Because when I moved into these cities and I see these people don't know how to live, we grew up with a clear sense of how to live off of the land and how to not exist on all these store-bought foods. We went to the store, to buy the accessories, not to buy the primary stuff that we needed.
That's right. I just remember walking around just biting big fresh tomatoes like they were apples, you know. And
right,
I ran to the farm. Byron, Brian, and I were the ones that went mostly with that, and I used to love it. Love it, but I lost some of that. I didn't retain it. Now, if I see a caterpillar now, I might run out of this room. You know,
oh no.
really ignorant type
so
of
from
stuff.
that, Purple Mountain Organics, we have been a contract farmer for the University of the District of Columbia. They have a department called Causes. And so under Causes, both Howard University and UDC are land grant universities, which mean that they, in theory, are supposed to have agricultural departments. And so with UDC, they have a 150-acre farm out in Beltsville, Maryland, and of that 150 acres, they have about 20 acres that are clear, and so we farm that farm for them. So that's sort of,
Good
Mondays,
job.
Tuesdays, Thursdays, every other Saturday, I see patients. We run our office, and then on, Wednesdays, Fridays, and the rest of the time, we farm. And so one of the biggest projects that we've done. If you go to our Purple Mountain Organics Facebook page, you'll see we brought rice production. We helped bring rice production back to the Mid-Atlantic. And I don't know if you know, rice is one of the highest, has a heavy metal problem. So most rice grown in the U.S. contains arsenic. And so even down in some areas, they have limits. Like they're telling people not to feed their babies more than one bowl of rice a week because of the arsenic levels in rice. So we looked around the world. There's it's a system called, I think it's IRI, but it's a system of rice production in which you're using less water. The other problem with rice farming is the production of methane gas. Rice production creates more methane which is a greenhouse gas, than cattle lots. And so around the world, they've been trying to get farmers to use less water to flood their fields for a shorter period of time. And so, but we brought rice production back to the Mid-Atlantic. And so on a small scale, for us, the beauty has been that we grow rice, and then from the rice production, we got equipment, because with grains, it's the processing equipment. Most grains that are grown, go to these large scale commodity crop systems. And so we have helped get equipment into this area that allows anyone to grow a grain. You can grow wheat, barley, oats. We got oats in the field now.
It looks good.
We got wheat and a whole bunch of other grains, buckwheat. All of these grains we have in the field, and we can get them from the field to the table. So it's been beautiful. Our diet is a vegan diet. I've been vegan on a plant-based diet for it's almost 30 years now.
Wow.
And so,
that's great.
But to be able to grow all of our own food and bring that to the table is a beautiful experience. But in order to do that, you have to go from looking at the farming process as a toil, as a hardship.
Right.
And you have to bring it into a love, because we can talk about, slavery and the white man and all of this stuff, but in the end, self-determination starts with simple things like being able to have control of your food.
That's right.
And right now, food, my brothers, they're out there, and, I have this other show that I do, and the brother argues with me about violence and images, and I'm like, brother, they are taking out way more people with food than they are with this sort of direct and blatant racism. And we let it slide because we want to participate.
Yeah.
And I would say that even Dr. King, when you think of the civil rights struggle and wanting to, sit at somebody's food counter and things like that, Dr. King at the end of his life realized that we need to have our own food counters and not just want to participate on somebody else's food counter.
Yeah.
And so I think that element of self-determination has to be included because, again, to me, that's one of the most revolutionary things that you can do.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. This is Liberated Sisters. Of course, as you can see, we're talking to Dr. Nazarak Ahmed. I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad. You're saying some very great things. I'm looking at the site, the purple truck. I see it. It's just all is so beautiful. I mean, who would have thought? We again, this is key for me. This is really special. And when you talk about the land, because of where we're from, you know, when you talk about the farms and you just talk about your experience, the initial one, you know, I didn't comment on it a lot, but I want to go right back to that just very briefly for me.
Okay.
See, it's those experiences. There's different reasons why people do what they do and their life and career paths take a certain way. But I just want to, you know, as you're talking about how many the people that are being killed by food, exactly. First is the lack of, and then the dependency that we have on bad foods and food deserts. And then it's thinking we're getting good food. But, you know, the head of the hospital, Dr. Desatel, to say that, just for people to wrap their minds around that type of comment. So if you can think that way, what's going into the care? What is in the back of your mind? You know,
for me, it was like, for one, you assume that somehow I'm going to sue you.
Right.
My parents were sort of the opposite of any of that. You understand? They weren't looking for a lawsuit, but to assume, you know, I simply was standing on the side of a telephone post and I didn't see the car coming.
Yeah.
But at no point was there any threat of a lawsuit, you know?
Yeah.
And so for him to assume that somehow, you know, like I ran out in front of his car, you know?
And then the derogatory comment, you see?
Right. Or the fear that you produce in a child who's like strapped to a stretcher to have obviously this man and the tone that he has, and even for him to come in there like that, it's a threat.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would really not like to live in a world where those things exist. And I'm sure things have shifted in a way, but I can say from working in the healthcare system, you know, I worked for a year at Touro Hospital. I was an ER tech at Touro Hospital, which is the largest private emergency room in the city of New Orleans. And, you know, one of the docs I worked with, I used to watch him make decisions on people's care based on their insurance status. And to me, if you're being paid by the hour, which most emergency room doctors are, why should you care what their insurance says or what it doesn't say? You should be there to provide whatever help you can give to those people and let the hospital's, you know, finance department work out, you know, what somebody's insurance status is. But I've seen people die on both ends of the spectrum, meaning if you don't have insurance, you don't get care. And if you do have really good insurance, you get the overcare that kind of brings you into treatments that you don't even need. And so, you know, watching, that was a key sort of moment in my life to watch and see, you know, like, wow, this is not just about helping people. This medical care system is driven by money.
Wow.
And so, and I don't think, you know, in Chinese medicine, their thing is, you know, you pay the doctor while you're well, and when you're sick, you know, the treatment is free. And we operate on a society where, you know, we have a healthcare industry.
Yeah.
And so, and it's being driven by the pharmaceutical industry and the surgical industry. And so, you know, the answers, that the solutions all have a dollar amount tied to them. So people come second to, you know, these solutions, and we all participate in it in some way. But if you look at the fact that America, you know, this idea of being number one, well, America's healthcare system ranks number 37 in the world. Even though America spends more money than anyone else in the world on their healthcare system. Wow. So there's something very, very wrong with, you know, what's going on. And, you know, I don't know if we'll ever move towards a true single payer system. Because even if you think of Obamacare and you know, in a sense, it's really been a giveaway to the insurance industry and to the hospitals, more so than some type of universal health care where we're really thinking of, you know, the health of the population before we think about who's going to make money off of it.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you for that. I just want to let you know, give you some comments of people who are tuning in online. You know, there's a great political scientist that I speak with often on various issues, and his name is Dr. Opio Saccone. He says overcare. This is his comment. That's the first time he thought about that. And yeah, that's right. Overcare, you know, so we're going to milk you out of this money. And if you don't have it, then we're going to keep our money and not spend it on you in the first place.
Right. Let's go back to Opelousas on that.
Yeah,
you know,
please.
The sad part of going back to Opelousas is you go there and the biggest thing happening there is Opelousas General Hospital. And it's happening because of the great insurance, the New Deal insurance that our parents had from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Well, really the 70s and the 80s. And the Medicare. So they bought up all surrounding blocks around there, and they built this huge sort of multiplex. And it's all based on, you know, Medicare.
Wow.
And all of the doctors many of them were not raised or knew nothing about Opelousas, but then you have this industry where the hospital becomes the largest employer in town, next to, I think, maybe Walmart. But those are the two biggest things happening in that town are the hospital and the Walmart. Wow. And that is really, really sad.
We got to go back. Well, you did go. And I miss home so much, but I went once, and I was kind of sad. I was like, wow, we have to go back home. But it's such a great, you know, our roots is such a great place. And then there's the Evangeline Downs, right? Of course, lest we forget the tracks.
Well, yeah, of course, and gambling.
The gambling tracks. But that's interesting that you would mention that about Opelousas General. You know, my mom worked there, and that was such a huge part of our lives, right? Of course, you know, my father, George, my mom, Dora, but my dad worked everywhere, so to speak. But my, tree surgeon and construction and different things. But my mom was a dietitian at the hospital, and I just remember it was just like this larger than life place. It was, I just have to say, racism was just a big picture for me growing up. You know,
right?
That's why when you start out talking about what happened with you, I was just like, whoa. Not surprised, but we gotta do something.
I don't know what can be done. I think about it, and I just look at it in the sense of, you know, it's what we had, because this is a huge thing, you know, about what's missing for people. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we bought into the idea of progress. So this is like, you know, for those of you who don't know, it's French Louisiana, so it's sort of Acadiana, and you have this sort of Creole culture where, you know, my mom, my grandmother, they spoke Creole. Yeah. And in the time that we were born, that went out of, you know, the priest, the system, so to say, sort of frowned upon that. So their goal with us was to, you know, look, this stuff is backwards. This Creole stuff, that's some backwards stuff. If you want your children to succeed, you do not teach them that language. You drop this sort of cultural aspect.
That's right.
And you allow them, give them the education so that they could participate in this commercial culture. So many of us left there and found the American dream. But what did we lose? We lost the sense of community.
Come on.
And the sense of community, don't get me wrong. I don't think we lost it. We lost it in terms of it's still there happening in that place.
Yeah.
I think crack cocaine and the crack epidemic destroyed the black community around America. So the sense of community anywhere is gone. But what we had was a sense of community where, you know, if I walked outside of my house when I was a child and I misbehaved, any one of the neighbors could discipline me. And then when I got back home, there was another discipline that coming, but you had a sense of, you didn't have to, worry about where your children were. And it was more that attitude of, y'all get out of here and come back when the sun goes down.
Yes.
Nowadays you can't do that with your children.
No,
you can't even think about doing that.
Yeah. And people are
And even though we have affluency,
wow.
It's like people gain money but lose community. So then everybody has stuff, but no people. So then there's this sense of sort of isolation.
Yeah.
And so, it's a greater sense of affluency, but an increased sense of isolation. Oh and so, and then in the bigger culture, I say this is very controversial. But if I look at what happened, not just with crack cocaine, but also with the music and sort of the beautiful music that we grew up with, Earth, Wind and Fire and Frankie Beverly and Maze and, music that had a sense and a message. And some of it, yes, still had sort of a broken love, this sort of incomplete love message to it, which I don't agree with. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't the destruction of the community. I think in the 90s, the musical industry made a conscious choice to promote a form of rap that is very destructive to the community. And so I understand hip hop. I understand, the griot in Africa. Mm-hmm. But what I don't agree with is, why did we have to promote the worst of the worst? And so what they've been able to do with that is popularize a part of Black culture that is the worst part of Black culture, and then you extend that to everyone. So in the end, you make the N-word out of everyone. Do you understand? Because
I do understand what you're saying.
You can create a people without a sense of self, and then the culture becomes a consumer culture. Mm-hmm. And so because you can get them to buy stuff that they don't need, will never need, because it's this quest to create an identity outside of the sense of purpose. Yeah. And it's never going to happen. Yeah. And so you look at many immigrants that come here, first generation, they try to stick to their culture. Second generation, sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Third generation,
I remember we had Tweewan No. I remember she was Vietnamese. And Tweewan No. I was like, what is that? Who is that? I've never seen. Look, let me say, you were so astute and keen and wise in school. Listening to you talk about that, man, I had none of those thoughts. I was little peasy running around with my 10-speed, my skates, and my 2 dogs. And that was it. I was throwing sticks in pecan trees, going to Green's candy store, going through school. I wasn't thinking about the world. I had never even planned to do anything. Over the summer, I said, well, I guess I'll go to college. That's what I did. Right. I don't even remember guidance counselors in high school. You talk about.
No, I don't think we had them.
You talk about a college coming to the high school. I must have been in a lunchroom, and I'm not painting a picture. Like, I don't want people to think that I was just a dummy. I just didn't have any care and concerns. I was carefree. Right. I was loving life. I had a family, and it speaks to what you said, Dr. Amin, about the protection. I would go from my house, my best friend's Kelly's house, across to the North Park on the other side of town. I didn't even think about danger. Every other corner you would see somebody you knew, but it's changed. It is changed. You pointed that out well. Right. And by the way, and I was here when crack, and in the advent of crack, and now I get everything crystal clear. But to think about, it went across the country. So what did it do in Opelousas?
Well, let me say this: 2 years ago, Opelousas had the number 2 per capita highest murder rate in the nation.
No way.
That's what it did to Opelousas.
No way. No way.
Yes. You can look that up. Google it.
I need to put my eyes. You know what? I feel so horrible. I write about all of this and advocate across the country in my own city. See, I never think about it. It's just
right.
It's just
so in a town of 20 or 30,000 folk with a majority Black population, if you do nothing to educate the people and you keep them with no opportunities in abject poverty, you reduce them into animals. That's what it does to a community.
Dr. Amin, we're killing cousins. When you think about that, come on now, who's dying? It's cousins. That's literally across the track.
Right.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So no, I mean, but that's what it does do. So hey, we're coming. We individually, you know, I call myself a self-potentialist.
Okay.
And I mean by that is we have to access the highest of who we are and offer that to the world. And so, you know, from a spiritual perspective, my philosophy is really universal in that I think that, you know, in all religions there is truth, and that, you know, people can find what they relate to, and that we do need community, and that we do need people to connect with. And so all of these communities, you know, the nation does beautiful work to uplift the people. And so we need places where we can sort of help each other. You know, it's like marriage. Do you want to marry somebody who figures out all the worst of you and then tries to use it against you to get what they want from you? Or do you make a conscious decision to accept that as people, we all have faults, and it is our job as fellow human beings to help bring out the best in the people in our world? Yes. And I think when we can do that, you know, we will live in a better world.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Amin, you're making it that better world. Who would have thought? Not who would have thought that you would do this, but just, again, to be able to reconnect. You know, this is a very special thing. And thank you for saying that, because I'm going to tell you, I really did get sad a little bit. And I had flashback to one of my recent trips. And thank you for pointing out where Opelousas is, because in my excitement, I just started talking. But, well, it's on the map. Okay, well, where is it? And so between Lafayette, I always tell people between Lafayette and Baton Rouge, and they can get a marker, you know, near Lake Charles, not quite close. But thank you for pointing out a little bit of the history of Opelousas. And it's just really been great talking to you. I want to have you back on and dig into some more. Maybe you can have me back on here and we can talk about some women's issues and, you know, just natural medicine in general. Absolutely. And, you know, what it is that I actually do on a day-to-day basis. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And what's your website again? The website is Wisdom Path. That's WISDOMPATH.net. And so it's wisdompath.net. That's our website. One of our other websites is purpletools.net. That's the farming website. So wisdompath.net. Okay. And so we're not quite out of time. So I want to ask you, I mean, we're almost there, but I want to ask you, for people who, you know, are hearing you and say, okay, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to do it. I'm going to plant something. Or where do I start? Give us a tip. I would say, you know, everyone has their issues, whether you're in the country or you're in town. You know, people are like, well, all the soils in the cities are, you know, full of lead and heavy metals. Yeah. You know, start by looking up, you know, people in the local farming community. Every town, like the popularization of urban farming is real. And so there's people doing things all around. So just figure out where some of the networks are, you know, and then, you know, what you do from a medical perspective. I see patients via Skype, via WhatsApp. We can see people from anywhere in the world with the technology that's available today. That is wonderful. And so if people have health problems and they wonder how natural medicine can help them, then you can give us a call. Okay, Dr. Amin, do you have any products? I don't have products. I'm not a seller of particular products in that way. Okay. I really, you know, again, it's about self-empowerment. And, you know, I don't do the quick fixes and things like that. In terms of, so I use professional supplements and in the world of natural medicine. There are professional supplement companies that provide supplements specifically for doctors to ensure the potency. And so I use many of those. And, you know, outside of the rice, you know, we sell rice as an agricultural product. But outside of that,
there's nothing that I have to sell.
Okay, and your rice, it's not like shipped or distributed. It's there in the area because of
mostly to the area. The whole point is local and fresh. So we haul the rice to order.
Got it. Oh my God. Okay. Would you like to add anything?
No, on the fresh note, rice is a grain loses about half of its nutritional value after about 6 months. So most rice, when you buy it on the shelf, you have no idea of how long it's been sitting there.
I never even think about that.
Yes. So and that's many foods lose their nutritional value in the same way.
Right.
So, no, we have a lot that we could potentially talk about.
Okay.
Again, I would love to talk about, particular health issues that are ravaging communities, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, the epidemic of uterine health issues that women suffer from, and Black women, it seems. And I think part of it is due to the stress involved with racism, why their reproductive systems tend to do worse in this culture than anyone else's.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being on with us here at Liberated Sisters. It's great to see you. And greetings to your family.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
And peace be with you.
Peace and blessings.
Okay.
That's our show for today. I enjoyed myself. I hope you all did. I really had a great time. Thank you so much, Dr. Amin, and thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Sister Felicia, Poetess Morris at Morris Media Studios. Also, thank you to Angela Birdsong, our producer. Read the Final Call's full coverage on Is There a Looming War with Syria? Minister Farrakhan's message is also there in the center page. Follow him, Minister Farrakhan, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. NOI.org for his Savior's Day address. FinalCall.com again to purchase. And Let's Change the World, his 44-song box set that he let out recently. LCTWmusic.com. That includes Stephanie Mills, Stevie Wonder, Snoop, Common, Rick Ross, Denise Williams, and many, many, many more. Damian Marley. I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad saying if it's impacting our community or can uplift us as a people, let's talk about it. Peace.